What's up, everybody? I'm Steve, and with me, as always, is D. And you're watching Conversations with Cabys, the only show on the internet that feeds the fire,
Fans the flames,
marches through the macabre,
wanders through the weird.
and dares to ask the question. What's the question today? SpaceX Starlink, and none other than Mr. Elon Musk.
That's
Um,
right.
It's going to be a good one today, folks. Lots of good shit. They just had a SpaceX Starlink launch 2 days ago. And an interesting one at that. It's always, when you're trying to land a rocket on a boat out in the middle of the goddamn ocean, it's always a question. um, but first, I guess we're going to get to SpaceX. Let's just start
Yeah,
off
let's
with that.
let's let's
And
reel it back and
it's a
get into that.
long story. They've been around for 17 years. Not a lot of people probably knew that. Not a lot of people knew that they've been around that long. Elon founded them in May of 2002 with all that PayPal money. After selling PayPal, he got into that and Tesla. When did Tesla come around? Tesla was 2003. So yeah, right after kind of SpaceX and Tesla kind of came around roughly around the same time. Um, with that their PayPal money, selling X.com, now PayPal, over to who bought that? Did Amazon buy
Who
that?
bought who bought PayPal?
Mm-hmm. Did Amazon buy that?
I thought eBay did.
Did eBay buy that? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
I want to say
Um.
they did.
Anyway, for lots of dollars, Smosh,
PayPal was acquired for
yeah,
by eBay for 1.5 billion.
and he got a payday and started some really cool companies. Um, he started with the Falcon 1, the prototype engine, the engine that basically, or the rocket that um, started it and started their bench testing, trying to get the engine right, and what type of propellant they were going to use, efficiency, how to make an engine, how to get a rocket into space, things like that. 3 failures, and literally on the fourth launch of the Falcon 1, this was it. If this launch did not succeed, there was zero money and SpaceX would be no more. Elon ran out of fucking money. Couldn't
Yep.
fund it anymore.
After personally finding money after each attempt and trying to find a way to fund the next mission.
Because each one was a failure. But the fourth one, they got it. They stuck it, and it essentially made them move forward into production of finally into the Falcon 9, their main rocket, and really what has their test bed for all of their future projects. Like the Falcon 9 has been the test bed for Falcon Heavy, and for what later would be Starship. And we'll talk about those in a second. We're not going to get, just as a side note to everybody, I'm not going to get uber nerdy here. We're not going to talk about thrust to weights and specific impulses and that kind of shit. We will talk about what low Earth orbit means and some kind of data like that. But if you really want a crunchy, data-driven, nerdy podcast about this stuff, Everyday Astronaut is a great resource. He's on YouTube. Go see him. He talks about all this shit. Like, his stuff is uber informative and really nerdy and geeky and great. He does the number crunching, so I don't have to. And you guys just get to see the cool shit. Because what we're going to talk about is why this is cool, what this means for the future, and what this means for the human race, and why it's really cool. We'll leave the number crunchers to the other guys. With that being said, Falcon 9 really is... Falcon 1 wasn't around very long. They kept Falcon 1 in production until 09, flights between 2006 and 09, and then that's when Dragon was around. So yeah, I mean it basically ran out of usefulness around I would say 2010, when they started really going in heavy with trying to figure out Falcon 9, because around June of 2010 was Falcon's third flight, Demo 2 to the International Space Station, it essentially marked the first commercial spacecraft to ever dock with the International Space Station. This was around 2010. This is when they were trying to get production for Falcon 9 really going. And what Falcon 9 is, what makes it great is, the reason why it's 9 is because there's 9 engines. 9 Merlin engines. 9 engines that shoot the son of a bitch off into space.
The Super Draco thrusters.
The Super Draco thrusters are on the Dragon space capsule, the Dragon manned space capsule. So
that's right. That's the other part.
Yeah, the Draco thrusters are really cool too, and that's more of so we got the Falcon 9. We got it to dock with the International Space Station. We're really psyched about that. So we can do our kind of commercial gather off, like dropping supplies off there. Essentially, that's what our goal was with the International Space Station stuff. But to second to that goal, we want to man people. We want to be a force in spaceflight again. We want to be able to, we haven't, since the space shuttle, since the 90s, we have not been able to take a United States astronaut and send them to the International Space Station. We have relied on the Russians to do that via the Soyuz capsule, the Soyuz program. That's something we want to fix here. That's what the Dragon spacecraft is all about. Dragon is the crewed variant, the space capsule that can dock with things. It has, the atmosphere in it. It has, again, the Super Draco engines for RCS, which is, I want to say it's a radial control system, but regardless, it's the control system in space that allows you to move about in zero gravity, because you don't need a giant engine to just do small pitch things and move yourself into docking with something else or things like that. You just need these really cool engines. The other engines also assist in landing. So when the thing comes down, the Draco engines are going to slow its descent. They're also going to allow for safety. Really what NASA wanted and what the Draco engines are really doing is the launch escape system. And that was a test that just happened in January for SpaceX, and that was a really huge milestone. And it went off perfectly. It went up at about... I don't remember what feet that was, or kilometers that was. It was fairly high up. I want to say it was above. I want to say it was in the neighborhood of like 90K up. Regardless, they have to do essentially for crew safety, for astronaut safety. If anything were to happen with the rocket upon ascent, there needs to be a system in place where the capsule holding the astronauts can eject from the booster, the Falcon 9 in this case, eject from that booster and be safe, be able to land back down, parachute back down, and not blow up with the booster. And that's essentially what they were testing in January, this last month, in order to get certification from NASA to take astronauts up to the International Space Station. And that's the next milestone right now. That's where we're sitting right now for SpaceX, Crew Dragon, and this commercial crew bid. Because essentially what happened was how SpaceX got involved in crew transport to the International Space Station in the first place was the commercial crew bid that NASA did. In what year was that? 2011. Okay, there we go. It was NASA issued a $75 million contract as part of a second round commercial crew development, right? SpaceX won part of it, Boeing won part of it. And Boeing is essentially NASA's buddy. They're the ones creating NASA's blueprint for what they're going to do for their architecture. They're commercial contracting the production of it, as they always did with Atlas V and all that other stuff, but it's still part of this commercial crew program is Boeing's SLS program, which also just went under some milestone failures, though, unfortunately, on their part. They came back, and upon further testing, essentially, of the SLS, the algorithm or some algorithms, essentially the programming logic inside the rocket is not functioning the way they wanted to, and they essentially, from what I understand, have to scrap it all. It's been very vague, the news about it, because it's a Boeing NASA kind of thing. So, and Boeing and NASA both are very secretive. Like, you rarely see shots of SLS. They're not as open as SpaceX is. SpaceX doesn't give a shit. They want you to see its stuff so that you can get hype about it, so you'll buy stock. I mean, they're a privately owned company. They're about the hype, right? And Elon's great at the hype. I mean, all of them are really good at the hype. The production is great. The production value of their rocket launches is awesome. The commentary, everything, the information,
Yeah.
even the display of telemetry and speed is just, it's a production value. It's high quality. SLS go ahead.
I'll say we'll probably end up throwing a couple links to some of the launches that we watched down in the description below. So check those out because they are really good.
Yeah, we'll have 3 or 4 for sure.
That we've watched several of them. They're very interesting, very intriguing, and very informative too. I mean, they explain every step of the launch preparation, what goes into the rocket, what it's comprised of. You know, they talk about the Super Draco thrusters. They talk about the Merlin engines. They talk about, one thing I'm stoked about is what you told me that Elon said, and that's why this is doing so well now, is that the biggest problem with space flight and exploring, getting us up into the out in space, is that it's too expensive and it needs to be affordable and reusable, so that they're designing these things to come back down. We can either catch them or have them automatically have a self-landing sequence to land on the drone ship out in the sea,
or at landing sites at Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg in California. Yeah, I mean, that's really,
hopefully wherever.
Right. Well, that's ultimately the goal, whether it be the moon or Mars. We'll also get to that deep thought here in a second. There's a lot to talk about here. So yeah, the Crew Dragon thing was a NASA funded thing, and that's where that comes in, and that's a big milestone, and that's kind of where we're at sitting right now. We're waiting for them to essentially schedule Crew Dragon Demo 2, I believe. Or is it's either Demo 2 or Demo 3, and that is the manned fucking flight where they essentially are in the Crew Dragon and they are flying up to the International Space Station, will dock with it, and people that are on the International Space Station will come back home on that same Dragon and land here. That's it. And once that happens, that's going to be, we're no longer going to need Soyuz. We're no longer going to use them. It will be SpaceX all the time. Crew Dragon will be flying astronauts to the International Space Station all the time, flying modules, flying all kinds of things. And with that, the cost of it is where it's at. They make their money. They're worth, SpaceX is worth $40 billion because of, no, Elon's worth $40 billion. Regardless, SpaceX is worth a shit ton of money because of their $33 billion. Sorry. 33.3 billion. They're worth that because of the reusability. They figured out a way to land rockets back on here, and it's back on Earth, back on anywhere. So whether it be actually a stationary landing pad on the ground at Earth, or literally on a ship 300 kilometers off Cape Canaveral, Florida, that's drone controlled. There is nobody on the ship because if anything, catastrophic would happen, the ship could blow up. So obviously you don't want anybody on it. So it's literally a drone fucking ship they remote control, shove it out there 300 kilometers off the coast, and the rocket lands on it.
The rocket that just went to space.
The booster, the Falcon 9 booster, they shoot it up, and in the algorithm that they program within the rocket, because essentially from 1 minute till 0 seconds, after 1 minute, T-minus 1 minute to liftoff, the rocket is controlled by the AI, the program that they wrote to shoot this fucker off, right? They don't control it really anymore. They're watching everything and obviously can take over control and do everything that they need to, but literally they don't do a thing. They watch it go off because they've done all the work already.
Mhm.
Everybody's still on their station, telemetry, speed, pressures, propulsion. Everybody's still on their station, right? But they're not doing anything. Literally, it's just shooting off via the program that they wrote. And if the program finds any errors, it self-aborts. And it is landing based upon the information that the drone ship is sending to it. It's landing via that. Like, it basically GPSs its way back down, knows the distance it's away from the docking of the drone ship, and then has enough propellant left in the booster to light the engine to slow it to 0 velocity. So land softly on 4 fucking legs out in the middle of the ocean.
Literally, the rocket comes in from up and just like flat, like no smash,
No smash,
hard,
no nothing. No wibble, no wobble, no fucking nothing. Solid as a rock, out in the middle of the ocean on a goddamn ship. It's amazing.
rocket,
And down. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing, and that's what they figured out. So they started landing them, and Falcon Heavy does this as well. And we'll talk about Falcon Heavy in a second. But they started landing them at Cape Canaveral or in Vandenberg, California. They have a SpaceX launch facility in both locations. In Cape Canaveral, where most everything is docked, they actually have 39A, historic 39A. The Apollo takeoff and landing launch pad 39A. It's historic that they are going to be launching the first astronauts from where we launched Apollo from.
That's amazing.
It's fucking beautiful. It's amazing. And then in Vandenberg, California, the military base out there, the United States Air Force Base in Vandenberg, California, they have another couple SpaceX landing spots. And that's where Falcon Heavy landed. Now, Falcon Heavy essentially is just 3 Falcon 9s strapped together, 2 side boosters, 1 regular Falcon 9 booster. It just carries a shit ton more up into space. That's hence the name Heavy. It's designed to carry more payload. And again, we're not going to get into specifics with payload. Go to Everyday Astronaut for those kind of details. I'm not going to bog you down with the numbers. You're never going to fucking remember them anyway. So it just carries more, hence Falcon Heavy, right? Now, that has 27 Merlin D engines on it. 3 times 9, 27. It's easy. But all 3 simultaneously land. They don't simultaneously, but the boosters land simultaneously. Then your center booster lands on the drone ship because that's too far down range. The boosters are still. So the reason why they need to land the 2 side boosters back on land is because they're not far enough away yet, right? So the boosters just kind of get us to where we're away enough from, get us to speed and get us up enough that we are away or in the thinner portion of the atmosphere where there's not as much aerodynamic forces pushing down on it, so we don't need as much thrust to get up in there, right? So those side boosters pop off at 60,000 feet, something like that. Not very high up there, not actually in orbit or near orbit yet. So those boosters are so close to where they originally left that they essentially just go up, and they don't have the inertia, they don't have the vertical thrust because of the aerodynamic forces to just keep going. So they kind of split off, and then the thrusters veer them back down, right, in a downward motion, and then they essentially free fall, guided by fins, literally fins on the bottom that guide these things down, RCS thrusters, and then also a gimbaled engine on the bottom. A gimbal meaning that the engine literally moves, the whole engine moves on the bottom of the engine, the center Merlin engine, and they just guide the son of a bitch down to 0 velocity, and then it lands on land at Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg. And then the center one will land downrange 300 miles because that has to get it up into atmosphere. The center one's so high up that it's now essentially, because what you do is you go vertical, yes, but you also start arcing. You want to start arcing up to where you're rotating around the Earth, right, at velocity. It's never a straight up thing, because all you'll do if you go straight up is come back fucking down again. You're not doing anything just going vertical. You actually have to pitch and roll. You have to make a rotation around the Earth, an orbit around the Earth. So that rocket is too far away essentially now from where it landed. It has to land out in the ocean somewhere. So that's why they do it. That's why they, in order, because they could. I mean, obviously, if they saved enough power, try to, or saved enough fuel to get it to land back down on the ground. But why do that? It's essentially when you waste that fuel for landing for reusability, you're lessening the payload that you can send up. So it's the cost benefit. So it's very specific what you have to do, because we can't save too much fuel. You know what I mean? Because then we can't get the payload up there like we want to. But we want that reusability. We need that reusability for it to be cost effective. It's this dance that they have to play, and all these things, all these check boxes. It's not just, okay, let's shoot a rocket up into space and land the motherfucker, right? That's the first thing Elon asked him to do. And then he said, cool, do that. Now, how about let's try to land it on a ship out in the ocean? And he just asks you to do these crazy ass things, and eventually you're like, oh, okay, it's not crazy anymore.
Yeah.
You just
figure out
how to do it. Yeah, you just like it. Ultimately, he says crazy shit all the time. So we'll just figure it out.
And he finds the brightest and best people to hire and get on his teams and work for him, and he must pay extremely well.
I'm sure, and I mean, it's the prestige to work at SpaceX, but also he's the CTO. He's an engineer still. It's not like he runs the company. He runs the design for all this shit. He is in there getting his hands dirty, building rockets. Like it's not like he was an integral part of Raptor's creation and design. And Raptor is the advancement of Merlin. So we have these advancements. All of this. Falcon 1 was a benchmark for Falcon 2. Falcon 9, a benchmark for Falcon Heavy. And a benchmark, and Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9 are benchmarks for what is to be Starship, the ship that will get us to the moon. And Starship is awesome. In November, they unveiled the Mark 1. Mark 2 is being built down there as well, and in Vandenberg, Mark 3 and 4 are being assembled down there too. Mark 3 and 4 are going to be fully ready to shoot into space. Sometime this year, they are going to make a 200 kilometer launch of Starship, like very soon, within, I would say, a couple months. The Starhopper test was okay. So let me take a step back real quick, because Grasshopper was turned into Falcon 9. Okay. Starhopper turned into Starship. These things are just benchmarks to test engines. Realistically, if the engine can get its ass off the ground, it doesn't necessarily look anything like what the final design for the actual ship is, but they're the prototype, the first beginning stages of testing new architecture.
So let's just explain real in just a one sentence. What is Grasshopper and what is Starhopper?
Grasshopper is the
what did it do?
The benchmark test for Falcon 9. It tested the engine.
What was that test?
It tested the engine. Literally all it does is hops. Like all Grasshopper does and all Starhopper do, they hop. They shoot the engine off for like 60 seconds and then land on another pad that's 30 feet or 100 feet or 300 feet away. It's not anything. It's literally a hop. It's to test the engine to make sure, A, that it doesn't blow up, that it can get our asses up in the air, and that it can get our asses back down again and not blow up. I mean, that's it. Both of those were done. So Starhopper was Falcon 9's test. Grasshopper was Falcon 9's test. Starhopper was Starship's test. And now they have Starship fully ready to go with 2 Raptor engines ready at Bona Chica. So they have Vandenberg as their launch, as their launch place. Cape Canaveral is their launch place. They're hoping that Boca Chica, Texas is going to be their third launch site. Because there's some people that already do shit in Boca Chica. I think Blue Origin has one out there. And then the Ares people, I think, have one out there. We may do another question roundup just on straight up other rocket manufacturing people, just to kind of do a little synopsis of the other guys out there. Um, none of them are as far along as what SpaceX is, so really the key player in this is SpaceX. But it's good that we have competition in the market because any advancement is a good advancement, and the more people that
For
we can
sure.
get sending shit up in space is great. Basically, in order, we need hundreds of millions of tons of resources sent into space in order to colonize another planet. And that's from Elon. So the more people we have to send shit up there, the better. Because if we can't do it, it would take us like 300 years alone.
Well, speaking of sending stuff up there, SpaceX again, killing it. They're sending stuff up there now.
Oh yeah, they're sending stuff up there now. I mean, they did all kinds of stuff. The coolest thing they've probably sent most recently was the Falcon Heavy test. Um, and the Falcon Heavy one will definitely be in here because that's probably the coolest landing. It's a simultaneous landing of the two boosters back at fucking Vandenberg, and it's sick. It's so fucking cool.
Literally, it'll take your breath away for if you're into it.
It's so good. But normally, what you do with when you're testing, because this was the first test, the true orbital test of Falcon Heavy, and when you're testing a new architecture like that, normally what you do is just fill the payload bay, right, with a bunch of fucking concrete, like hundreds of tons of concrete. That's no
Get your
fun.
max load.
That's no fun. Elon didn't want to do that. So what he did was he put a Tesla Roadster in the motherfucker with a mannequin in a SpaceX Dragon spacesuit, the same spacesuit that the astronauts are going to wear in the Dragon capsule, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a little Tesla and a space. They called him Starman. A little, like a baby Hot Wheel Tesla with a baby Starman in it. And there's a plaque on it that says "Made on Earth by Humans."
Yep.
Inside the Tesla. But yeah, it's flying to Mars right now as we speak. That Tesla Roadster in the payload bay, just shooting off to Mars. I don't know if it's still playing David Bowie rocket or David Bowie ground control, but you know, hey, it's he's just cool, man. He does cool shit. So yeah, that's what they shot off was a Tesla Roadster with a little mannequin they called Starman, in the fucking driver's seat, just to fuck with the aliens.
Right.
So,
If you ever find this, hey, we're here.
right. So yeah, that was that. But yeah, so looking ahead at Starship, and Starship again is what's going to take us to the moon. Falcon Heavy is just taking payloads. Falcon 9 is just taking payloads and astronauts to the International Space Station. Starship is going to take a shit ton of people to different planets. That will make us an interplanetary species, and that's what the goal is. And hopefully, basically by, I mean, what's he saying? I don't want to get this wrong. I think it's 2025 is when. Let me do this. Let me just do this.
I thought I remembered here in 2030 for some reason.
Let me just give you some. Yeah. Okay. So Starship Mark One, Boca Chica dismantled and scrapped. Mark Two was what is suspended right now. So will be scrapped. SN1's under construction. SN2's under construction. User refined flight design. So yeah, they're different. They're different flight designs. That's interesting. I haven't heard that. I have not heard that Mark 1 is not going to go. Yeah, high altitude in December 28th. Mark 1 in Boca Chica. Mark 2, Florida. High velocity testing the processors is taller than the Starhopper. Right, sure. Okay, so November 20th, 2009. Starship Mark 1 was partially destroyed during max pressure testing. Tank testing when the LOX tank ruptured along a weld line of the craft steel structure. That's the other thing. Starship's going to be made entirely out of fucking steel.
Yeah, the outer hull is a bunch of steel panels
Welded together. It's crazy.
Cray.
The upper bulkhead went airborne. All landed craft, no issues reported. SpaceX said they will retire Mark 1 and Mark 2 prototypes after the incident and focus on Mark 3 and Mark 4 designs. Shit, that sucks. Okay, so that definitely pushes back Starhopper high altitude flights. Or Starship high altitude flights, because essentially we're going to change it over. It will be Starship at that point when they go to high altitude, high speed testing, high velocity testing. And the initial thoughts about that were it was gonna go up to 200 kilometers. If I remember correctly, that was what it was slated as. So I guess we're talking about that being on hold. Damn, that throws a little bit of a wrench in there. I think they're also trying to work on. I mean, Crew Dragon. They got a lot in the fucking hopper right now. We're talking no pun intended. We're talking about Starship trying to essentially build a new architecture while we're also trying to certify Falcon 9 for crew missions up into the ISS, and also still trying to get Starlink going.
Yes.
You know, and
what's that?
Well, Starlink is a project where it's a satellite constellation that SpaceX invented to create high-speed fiber-level internet across the globe. They started launching them 60 at a time in it was the maiden launch was February 22nd of 2018, but they started launching 60 at a time in last year. I want to say it was like March of last year. September? SpaceX.
Here we go.
Had the FCC.
So they put the
Was it
first
June?
They put the first 60 up in. I just had that one up earlier.
7 will pay February. Was it February? No, April. Plan to launch the first large batch. End of June. All 60. Okay. So it looks like it was April. Large batch and a clear the achievement.
Oh yeah, here we go. The first launch was 2 satellites deployed in February 22nd of 2018.
Mm-hmm. That was the first initial launch, but then they had in November of 2018 they put more in. Because essentially what they had to do in November, it looks like they have to do a lot with the FCC too, because we're talking about essentially the way the satellites are going to communicate in low Earth orbit is via the K under and K above microwave bands, point to point, and then radial arrays down to you, so they can essentially focus where the transmission goes, be via radial array antennae, right? And focus to the pizza box receiver, essentially pizza box size receiver that's going to be on top of your house or on top of your whatever. And the goal is to give internet, broadband quality internet, to locations that don't have fiber yet, that are underserved, or just basically you cannot get it out there. Literally, you can't get internet out there. This is what they're doing. Like in the mountains or in the deserts or wherever, you're going to be able to have internet everywhere.
Everywhere. That means every rural area that's podunk, something underdeveloped community, underserved areas of other countries. I mean, eventually this is going to be a global blanket of internet connectivity for the world to use.
They've already launched as of 2 days ago, Monday, February 17th. They've launched 300 satellites. The initial phase 1 is to be completed by March of 2027. Well, March of 2024, I guess phase 1 is going to be completed. That's going to be 1,584 satellites, 1,584 satellites into 72 orbital planes of 22 satellites each, covering the entirety of the North America and South America. They've launched 300 of those satellites. The next phase is 1,600 satellites. I mean, so the initial phase is the 1,584. They have 300 of those already out, and they will have the rest of them done by the end of this year. The next phase is 1,600 satellites. Within phase one, or the next part of phase one is 1,600 satellites, then 400 satellites, and these are all at different orbital heights, right? The first one is 550 kilometers. The next 1,600 are going to be at 1,000 kilometers, or 1,110 kilometers. Then a little bit 400 more, a little higher, 375 more, a little higher, and then 450 a little higher than that. And that's phase one. But that's over. Let me do some fucking quick math here. 375.
Well, and what's great is we were talking
4,409 satellites in orbit in phase one. And then they're talking about in phase two, which should be completed by 2027, having, let's see, 11,927 satellites in orbit in this mega internet constellation cluster, which turns latency down to zero. They're at such a low orbit, so many of them communicating nanosecondly via microwave transmission, point to point, and then array antennae down to you at such a low orbit that it gets to you in like 30 milliseconds. Like, it's nothing. The latency is nothing. From you to Brazil, from the North Pole to the South Pole would be 100 milliseconds. I mean, it would be nothing. It just turns everything upside down. When you talk about broadband internet accessible across the globe. Because right now, what are we fighting? We're fighting the interests of the communication providers to give service to the area that you're in, period.
Yeah.
If they don't feel like you're a serviceable network, they will not give you service. That's bullshit. That is holding back technology to areas that they don't see deserve it. That's fucked up. I mean, that's another form of discrimination. That's another form of bigotry. That's another form of elitism. That's another form of the government and the elite holding you down. I mean, you can conspiracy theory all day, but the bottom line is you cannot get internet if you live in certain areas. And that is a travesty. You cannot have access to all the information in the world like the rest of us do if you live in certain areas. That's one. That's just one thing that this is going to solve. But think about this. What if everybody has a sat phone in 5 years? Because now it's quicker and the internet's better and it's more efficient for me to voice over IP on my sat phone to a Starlink satellite and talk to you than it is on a cellular network.
We're not talking like a big old block phone like back in the day. We're talking
about
like
your same phone. It's just the same fucking phone. All it's going to be in it is a little chip that point to points to. Now the cell towers are going to be Starlink towers. And your phone will chip into the Starlink tower. You want to talk about everybody freaking out over the microwave technology and radiation of 5G? There won't even need to be a 5G.
Exactly.
5G turns into satellite.
And what happens to all the big cell phone companies?
5G, the 5G radiation thing's complete bullshit. By the way, it's complete bullshit. It doesn't work.
What happens to all the cell phone companies though? They either buy into fucking Starlink or they.
Right. They buy in or go out. I mean, so what's going to happen is they're going to lease the resources from the Starlink satellites, because Starlink is not going to put in new cell tower infrastructure. What they are going to do is send over their Starlink array antenna to put on their cell towers. And now that cell tower turns into a satellite tower. So they have to work together. So everything that T-Mobile, AT&T, all these cell towers that have been put in by all the communication providers now have a lease with Starlink for Starlink's access to be on those towers, so your sat phone will work. And then what they'll do is, if Starlink is leasing the tower from them, well, then all they have to do as a cell phone provider is lease the network now. Rather than it being a cellular network, it's now a Starlink network, and all they have to do is to lease the broadband from Starlink. You know what I'm saying?
I think
So
so.
it totally kills cellular networks, 4G, 5G, all that shit. The cell towers will still be there, but every phone will be a sat phone. And you'll have Starlink phones if you're a Starlink provider, or you'll have AT&T or whatever, Spectrum or anybody. I mean, Spectrum is in the voice game now. A internet provider, a communication provider, is in, who was never in the phone game, is now in the cell game because they saw this coming and knew they had to diversify.
And that's via Verizon, right?
They're on the Verizon back end, but not for long. I guarantee Spectrum is going to be the first to jump ship and go Starlink. I guarantee it. They will back end everything because it won't matter because they lease everything from Verizon anyway. So what's it leasing it from a different provider when the service is better? You don't have to worry about it. I mean, and then what happens is Starlink and Charter get into bed with each other, right? And now you have Spectrum service via Starlink to everywhere, and you can get your TV, your Spectrum TV, via Starlink satellite now. You'll probably have to have 2 or 3, one for each spectrum, no pun intended, that you're on, whether that be internet as one, and then phone, or phone and kind of TV as one as well. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I mean, all of this expands when you talk about this. Like, everything is going to change. There's literally, and I don't know how, nobody saw this coming. This shit has happened so fucking fast that nobody has been able to fucking stop it. This right here is okay. Essentially, the scuttlebutt right now, everybody's talking about SpaceX taking Starlink into an IPO. And what an IPO means essentially is they take it public to a publicly traded company. They're saying that it's worth 30 fucking billion. The estimates, the analysis right now is that if Starlink went IPO, it would be worth 30 billion. A $30 billion company that he basically fucking started fucking with in 2019, really heavy. In May 24th of 2019 was the first time they launched 60. May 24th of 2019 was the first time they launched 60. Then in, I want to say it was September, they launched 60 more. In January, November they launched 60 more. In January, twice in January, they've launched 60. And they just launched one last Monday, 60. Every 2 weeks they're launching 60. And they started it this year.
Yeah, that was their New Year's resolution, I think.
It was, yeah, we're fucking launching, every 2 weeks we're launching 60. And
now they are taking they are planning another one coming up too. March 4th is their next plan.
Which happens to be
launch.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And this is ramping and happening so quickly, none of the communication providers are able to fucking, catch up. I mean, it's insane. But when we talk about reusability, and we talk about last Monday's launch, we have to talk about how it's hard to land rockets on ships. Because the video that I'm going to show you, I'll have it in the description, you can see in the upper right corner of the left screen, the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Yes, that is the name of the drone ship. The drone ship is called Of Course I Still Love You. Because it's an acronym, they had to give out an acronym for the ship. It's like I-C-I-O or L-Y, I guess. Whatever acronym. It has a fucking, letters. So they made an acronym for it. It's called Of Course I Still Love You. The two fucking... They're also catching the fairings. So all of these satellites have fairings on them. The payload bay that houses the 60 satellites has 2 fairings that split off, right? They're trying
essentially doors that go on to the outside.
It's an aerodynamic. It's an aerodynamic shell that prevents crosswinds and allows the rocket to go in the air like a bullet. That's what it's there for. And they release the fairing when you're up out of atmosphere enough to where there's aerodynamic pressures aren't there anymore, and it doesn't matter if the fairing's on at all. It doesn't fucking make a difference. So they release it in two halves, split off, and go down. They have parachutes on them, and they're literally trying to catch them on drone ships. One's called Mr. E, right? The other one's called Miss Chief. They're fucking great. Essentially, all it is though is a giant net, like a fish. It's like a fishing boat. You know how you've seen the fishing boats that have the big poles off the sides, and that's where the nets are and shit. But literally, it's the two poles off the sides with a big net in it, like it's like a trapeze artist's safety net. And literally, the fucking fairing is caught in the goddamn net. That's how they figured out how to do it.
And they've done it multiple times.
They've caught 3 so far, but I mean, they're hoping that it's like as routine as the landings, which this was going to be the 50th. But unfortunately, if you look in that upper right-hand corner of, like, Of Course I Still Love You, you're going to see it land in the water. Now, it landed about 50 feet off the ship, and they do that on purpose. Something happened with the landing that the software didn't like, the algorithm didn't like, the AI within the rocket did not like, and they're, in order to not blow up Of Course I Still Love You, they are designed to land 50 feet off and try to land as softly in the water as they can so they can recover it.
And I believe they did say they had a successful recovery.
It was a soft landing. I haven't checked Twitter to see if they've recovered it. I'm sure they did. They're SpaceX. They do it all the time. I mean, that's what this is essentially. If they don't, if that, this is always their secondary mission. The secondary mission is to land the rockets, land the boosters back on the drone ships or on land. And if they don't, the backup to mission, the failure of mission 2 is always to make sure that you retrieve what you can of the rocket, as long as it didn't blow up, totally incinerate. The reason for fairing catching is very interesting. It has nothing to do with cost. And like reuse, obviously it's cheaper probably to catch it and that type of thing. It's lead time. It takes a long time to make the fairings. And if they can catch them, they can just reuse them.
Right,
and then they don't have to
wait.
Right, because in order to get this to every 2 weeks, they have to catch enough fairings essentially to reuse them and keep it going. It's they have enough rockets. The fairings are the problem, and it's always the same fairing because they're always shooting up 60. Like this is the most cost-effective solution that they found, and now it's how do I perfect it? How do I get it better? How do I get it to where I can ramp it up to almost like where it's commercial launches? Like where we can just get this thing where it's like it's a jet. We simply take the rocket, it gets transported, a simple check over, refueled, and then it shoots off again the same day. Like that's ultimately the goal.
And we're talking from launch to landing of the final component of the rocket. We're talking total time elapsed, what, 20 minutes?
To touchdown, I think you're talking I want to say it's like 17 or something like that. No, I want to say no. The landing burn was 6 minutes. Was T plus 6 minutes? Six and a half minutes. That was their last one, right? The last one, yeah. T plus like 6.5 minutes. So anywhere from let's say 7 minutes to 10 minutes is your cycle time for the booster. So the booster can be back on the ground while you're still doing the mission with your first stage and your payload.
Right.
No, and you can be the booster. The booster can be landed, and you can be cycling it while this mission is going on up there, and getting it ready for the next one, and just boom, 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 we're going. And that's what it's going to be like. It's going to be like in fucking international airport. I mean, probably scheduled far better, honestly.
Well, there's a lot less competition right now, so.
Well, right. I mean, there's not. Yeah, it's not an open. That's what's really cool about spaceports, right? Spaceports are single use, like they're owned by their provider, the person that shoots off whatever they're shooting off. So you'll never have the competition to where I got to go to the Delta Gate. You're never going to go to that. You're going to go to Cape Canaveral. You're going to go to SpaceX, and you're going to go where you're going to go. And that's what we're talking about here. There's going to be a spaceport in 5 years. If you want to go to the moon, you're going to be able to go to the moon to spin around it. by 2022 we're supposed to have the moon project is supposed to go on. It was essentially funded by an artist. um, I want to say it's like Hello Moon. Let's see where's Starship, where's the Hello Moon project history.
While you're looking at that, speaking of Starship, I just one little fun fact here is that we were talking about Starship. That's the ship that's going to carry us all, to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're actually going to also use that as a way to launch satellites as well.
Oh, sure, yeah. Any big satellites, a bunch of satellites, anything. You can do anything that you can do with a Falcon 9 with a Starship. It's just a lot more payload.
Yeah. So instead of 60, where the Falcon 9 can carry it, the Starship one's going to be able to take 400 up at a time and deploy them.
Right.
Which that's amazing. Holy shit.
Right. That's a ton. I mean, it's a ton. It's a ton. I mean, and we're talking Starship is crazy. The Raptor engine is crazy. It's efficient as shit. It runs more efficient than, and they've gotten the efficiency up every time. It's more efficient than Merlin, which was more efficient than their first engine. So it's going to be crazy. The goal for Starship is to refuel in orbit as well. So essentially, you shoot off with you shoot off in a crewed Starship, okay, and then they shoot off an unmanned Starship, like a drone Starship that has fuel on it, that literally docks back to back with you, refills your Starship with enough fuel to get you to Mars, and then you shoot off to Mars, and it takes you 6 months to get there.
Holy crap.
But he's talking about having, like, it's literally like a movie theater and like space games, like VR games, and like zero grav games and shit, like essentially an entertainment space, as well as your sleeping quarters, as well as your food, all that. There will be gravity, like a full grav chamber. I'm pretty sure he said, like, a place that will not be zero gravity. But there will be places that are zero gravity. It's where you can do zero gravity things and shit like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, Starship is in its infancy, and as we've learned, we just learned right now that they're pushing it back and essentially have scrapped Mark 1 and 2 for a new an SN1 and SN2 that they're working on in Boca Chica, and that's the future, though. That's where we're headed, and everything that they're doing with Falcon 9 and everything that they've done with Starlink and all of these things are combined into the goal of making us a multi-planet species, and that's what Elon's trying to do. I mean, he's trying to get us off of here to where, and Jeff Bezos is a very similar one who does Blue Origin, but I mean, I feel like they both agree in this fact of where they were saying that in order for Earth to survive, and in order for we as humans to survive, we need to become multiplanetary. So we have the facilities to do other things. Like, let's say in a perfect world, we are multiplanetary. All of these rocket launches and all of this space travel is just as normal as taking a plane to Florida. From here, it's just every day. Earth is only used to live on, to vacation on, to enjoy its space, and every energy and everything that we do here is reusable, whether it be solar, natural gas. There is no carbon emitting industrial work allowed on the Earth anymore. Earth is carbon free, period. You know what I'm saying? All industrial work is shut down on Earth. Everywhere else is where we do that at. We do our industrial work on Mars, where it doesn't matter because it doesn't have an atmosphere. We can do our work on the moon, where it doesn't. We do our mining, all of our production and gas emitting manufacturing. We do those on other planets that it doesn't matter on. That it won't probably make those gases. That we do. You know what I mean? We do all of that. All of the work that we do here that is contaminating to Earth, We do that on other planets. We mine asteroids. We get our resources from other locations rather than Earth. And Earth is carbon free. So it can be
That's,
around.
that seems like that would be a hefty fucking, ask of somebody to find water and food source and rare minerals and elements on the periodic table out of space.
Oh, well, that's easy. They're
In
everywhere.
an enough abundance, in an enough abundance to fully keep human life going on another planet.
Oh, for sure. There's already enough water on Mars to keep us going on Mars. There's enough water on the moon to keep us going on. The moon's poles are full of water. They're frozen water. There's they've done mineral scans of the moon and Mars. There is vast amounts of resources on there. We could totally mine the moon. Titan, Saturn's moon, is giant, is just massive ore. Like, we could mine all of these moons. They're abundant resources. That's all they are natural resources. Great, like resources that we're talking about. Let's say we go to the moon. There's enough resources if we had a station on the moon to where we could mine the resources off the moon to, and you got to think about it. So let's say we use hydrolux, okay? So all it is like hydrogen H2O2, right? Or like H4O2. It's basically all it is hydrogen and water, or hydrogen and oxygen, and the only thing that you get left, all it does is burn the oxygen, and what you have left is water, is a byproduct of the rocket fuel. Literally, the rocket, all it burns is hydrogen and oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
The chemical reaction creates water. From the burning of those two chemicals in this particular fuel, in this particular engine, the byproduct of it is water. So you make those engines on the moon. You make those engines on Mars. Now I'm shooting rockets off that are creating a resource I need to live on this planet. Now all we do is filter it, and you're done.
But that means that
creating water.
That means we need to
need
have
a shit ton of hydrogen and a shit ton of oxygen. Sure. We have all that though. There's all that on fucking the moon. There's all that on Mars. There's also other things. There's other resources. I mean, there's vast amounts on there, and I mean, not to get there's iron ores and anything you could ever want is there. That's how we got it. You know what I mean? Everything that's on this planet, the reason why we have it, all the natural resources, is because fucking asteroids have impacted here, and we're just a big giant ball of minerals. That's what all the other balls of minerals are out in the solar system. We don't have to just mine this one and ruin this one. Let's ruin the ones that are already ruined that you can't live on. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. That way we actually have a planet for hundreds of years. If we don't stop doing what we're doing, nobody's going to be able to live here anymore. It's going to be like Mars. And then where are you going to go? There isn't anything like this. And if we could die off as a species because we are not multiplanetary, because we have not decided, and I think that will stop a lot of bullshit. When everyone on Earth realizes that there are humans that living somewhere else on another planet, and that we're a lot smaller than we think, and the world is a lot bigger than we think, and maybe this bullshit that we fight about isn't worth it, and we'll all realize that in order to make for the greater good, we got to work together, and let's plan for the adventure, man. Let's live to live, not live to hate each other and fight each other and make the most money. Let's live to explore. Let's live to go find new shit. Let's live to learn. Let's live to
be better.
Be better and figure out what's out there, man. And that's what I think Elon's about. And I think everything he's doing, every industry he's in, he's trying to better the world through it. And I know that's a very naive mindset, I guess, but I don't think it's naive in this case. I really think he's a good guy who's trying to make the world better.
I think he has the childlike visions and dreams that a child would have, but he has the mental capacity and the vision to put them into fruition and bring them into existence.
He could very well be an alien as well. He could be from the future. He could be like a super like genius from the future who invented time travel and came back here to fix this because he knew it was going to turn to shit.
So just in case you guys need a recap of all the things that he's involved with currently, we have SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, Starlink. We have Hyperloop,
the Boring Company. So he founded SpaceX, co-founded and product architect for Tesla, co-founded Neuralink, founded Boring Company, co-founded Zip2, founded XCOM, which is now PayPal, co-founded OpenAI, and is the chairman at Solar City. Solar City is the spin-off of Tesla, the solar batteries. Solar City's the IP. I mean, I don't know if is Solar City on an IPO yet. Not yet. No, they got the Gigafactories. Is it a tradable company? Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it is. No, it's the parent of Tesla. Okay, so it's not. It's not. They haven't pushed that out on IP. But again, these are things like it. And again, I really think he's just trying to make the world a better place. And he sees renewables as that. Like, in order to make us a better, in order for the human race to sustain, we need reusability and renewability, right? What areas of that are lacking? How can I get in those areas, exploit the problems to make myself a ton of money? And that's what he does every time. Everything, if you look at everything he did, it's not hard. He just saw the problems, knew the solution to make that better, implemented that solution, and made a ton of money. That's all it is. I mean, ultimately, and creatives say this all the time, right? Comics, artists, people that are really creative and rich and like celebrities and shit say this all the time. They are smart enough to get out of their own way and just let life happen to them. They make decisions and make choices and guide themselves in positivity, right? But are wise enough to get out of their own way. And if things are happening, just to let them happen, right? I think that can be applied to everything. I think your naivete that you're seeing in him, his childlike wonder, I think that's him just getting out of his own fucking way. I see the problem. I see the solution. Let's not cloud it with a bunch of bullshit. Yes, I can do that. Why couldn't I? Don't tell me no. That's dumb. Why would you say no? All it is, it's a problem and there's a solution. There's always a solution to every problem. As long as you understand the problem, you can find the solution. And that's what he does. It's not naivete. It's simplifying it down. Everything can be easy if you simplify it down to its base thing. And that's what he does. I mean, he really just, what's the problem? What is the problem, really? Well, it's that electric cars just cost too much and they're ugly. Well, that's not really the problem. What really is the problem? You're not making them you're certainly not using Henry Ford's model. You're making them one-off, and you're not assembly lining it. Your batteries cost too damn much. You haven't got anybody with any design sense in there to make your cars look good, and they're not fast. Let's fix all those things.
Happen.
Seems really simple to me. It's everybody just gets in their own head with, man, I can't do it because of this. I can't do it because of that. Well, why can't you do it because of that? What would need to change in order for that not to be a thing? Let's change those things. Stop putting your feet down and to me, that's a childlike thing where you just stomp your feet and say, I can't do it. That's bullshit. Yeah, you can. Don't tell me you can't do anything.
I didn't mean that in a negative way when I said
I didn't. That. And I think what you're meaning is it's the wonder of him. He sees the wonder in the world much like a child does. And we all as adults don't do that anymore. And I agree. I think we all need to stop fucking doing that. I think we all need to get the fuck out of the cynicism and realize that the world is beautiful and magical and mysterious and fucking amazing and wonderful. And we can do anything in it as long as you want to do it. The only person in the world that ever is going to make you not do something is you. And your own fucking head.
We're testaments to that.
Right. I mean, just fucking do it. That's all you got to do. Figure out the problem. Really what the problem is. Not what I think the problem is. Or it's just too hard. That's bullshit. All that's bullshit. It can't be done. There's nothing that can't be done unless it goes outside the laws of physics, and sometimes you can skirt around that shit. So, and that's what I think I think that's where he's at. I think that's where his headspace is at. I think nobody told him you can't do that ever in his life, or at least in his growing up. Nobody ever told him that, so he never learned that he couldn't do anything. So he just does it.
Yeah. Yeah. The dude's got unbridled amounts of tenacity and persistence and intelligence.
And his middle name is Reeve. Right. Crazy name.
Elon Reeve Musk.
But yeah, with that, and I think I hope that's what we try to give with this channel, is the hope for the world. We want everybody to fuck the cynicism, get out of your own head, stop being so negative, stop saying you can't do something, just do it. Be positive. Let's go. Let's move forward. And let's move forward together as the humans. Stop being bigots and racists and fuckheads, and just, we're all humans. We're all on this blue fucking marble together, and we all need to work together to make it better.
The first step away from thinking about something in a negative light, and the first positive step you take in action to either fix that or do something positive in your own life, you immediately start to feel better.
For sure.
Every positive action just builds upon another. So keep doing those things and keep making a difference.
For sure. And with that, we love you guys. And until next time, deuces.